So the last time we left off, we were talking about the very first camo dude at Area 51, Richard Mingus. Now we're on to this video. Welcome to the J-Rod Files. On April 24th, 1964, driving southbound on a lone desert highway, sounds like a song, right? In New Mexico, Socorro police officer Lonnie Zamora was in pursuit of a speeding car outside of the town of Socorro, which is in New Mexico. Now, New Mexico police officer Lonnie Zamora, he began chasing a teenager who was speeding through the town. Not good, right? Lonnie chased the teen into the desert, and when he saw a strange object, and so he stopped. This is Lonnie, the police officer. He stopped chasing the speeding teenager as he was startled by a loud roaring sound. Okay? This is according to Lonnie, the police officer. Seconds later, he saw a large flame rising up from the ground and pierced the sky above a remote patch of desert southwest of the highway. This is in Socorro, New Mexico. Fearing that a nearby dynamite shack might explode, or could have exploded, Zamora, like I mentioned, let the speeding car go. He let the teenager continue on his way. He turned right and drove down a very bumpy gravel road. This is the police officer that ran alongside the dynamite shack. So Lonnie had to check out the dynamite shack. Officer Zamora's police cruiser maneuvered along the rocky road until he came upon a steep hill. There's lots of steep hills in New Mexico. Rising up from behind the hill was a smokeless fire that glowed like in a funnel of blue and orange tinted flames, which is interesting. The origin of the flames, so Officer Zamora attempted to drive up to it. His cruiser's tires slipped, I can imagine, and swayed on the loose gravel. But after 3 attempts, he didn't give up. Officer Zamora finally made it to the top of this rise. Now, what he saw was a very shiny object about the size of a mid-sized American sedan, perhaps like the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. It shone and it glinted in the late afternoon sunshine. So this was late afternoon. And at about 200 yards from where Officer Zamora was actually perched, I guess he was perched on the hilltop. At first glance, he thought he was a car, maybe like a Volkswagen had overturned in an arroyo, which is actually a dry creek bed. But when he drove closer, it appeared to be aluminum in color and white, not chrome, an oval shaped like a football. Very unusual, right? Officer Zamora then drove toward this strange object along the hill's crest for about 50 feet, and then he stopped the car. Now he got on his radio and he radioed back to the sheriff's office that he would be busy checking on a wreck of some kind down in the arroyo. Then he descended on foot down the hill. So he's clambering down the side of this hill towards this object. Officer Zamora was again startled by a very loud rumble, not exactly like a blast, but also not steady like a jet engine. It started at a very low frequency and with the pitch slowly rising. Imagine that, right? The flame then appeared to be coming from the underside of this object, glowing light blue on top of an orange at the bottom. So Zamora panicked. Well, I would too, right? Somewhat, anyway. He's a police officer. He was afraid that the object was about to explode. He ran to take cover, but turned back to look at the object as he fled. So, he's normal, right? A normal human being. He noticed a red symbol on the side of the craft shaped like a point that was about 2 inches high and 2 inches wide. It was probably bigger than that. The object was smooth and shiny white. He could see like a shiny white aluminum with no visible windows or doors. But there appeared to be 2 metal legs that were slanted outward, supporting it. He described it as a large white craft, similar in size and shape to a propane storage tank. The craft rested on 3 legs, not 2, that extended down into the desert floor. On the side of the craft was a red insignia of a horizontal line with an upwards facing arrow contained under an arch. Interesting. The most startling feature of this sighting was the beings that he saw enter the craft. So he saw aliens. This is an officer in the New Mexico State Police. Lonnie details the beings as 2 larger than a child, but smaller than adult human-like beings, okay, both wearing white suits similar to the laboratory equipment. So they look like lab workers. After arriving on the scene, the 2 beings spotted Zamora, and they quickly re-entered back. They went back towards their spacecraft and entered it. Officer Zamora then sprinted to his police car, but he hit his leg on the fender and he fell onto the ground. He got up, he ran another 20-25 feet or so, and when he looked back again, he saw the object begin to rise up into the sky. It rose to the level of the car, then higher. It was up to about 20 and then 25 feet in the air. And then Zamora ran another 50 feet from his car and just over the edge of the hill and ducked. I guess he ducked down. Kneeling as close to the ground as he could, he covered his face with his arms for protection. I can't blame him. Suddenly, this roaring craft stopped. So it became a very uneasy silence, and Zamora lifted his head up and he looked to see what was going on, and the object sped away from him. It kind of like turned on its back and then boom, it headed toward the southwest, appearing to go in a straight line about 10 to 15 feet off the ground. It cleared the 8-foot tall dynamite shack, which the Zamora inspected, and by about 3 feet, and then continued in a southwesterly direction until it went over the high desert mountains and disappeared. Boom, just like that. Immediately following the event, a group of other police officers arrived on the scene and began surveying the area. They're looking around the area, see what's going on. Investigators took photographs of the prints left by the 3 legs of the lander, and also footprints. They took footprints samples, also samples of the charred sand from the underneath of the craft. And quickly after the local investigators arrived on the scene, federal officers also arrived. I'm going to assume FBI. As expected, the federal agents forced the local police officers out of the scene and seized all of the evidence. Imagine that. Hector Quintanilla, the last chief officer of the U.S. Air Force's famous UFO investigation program, Project Blue Book, was in charge of the Zamora case. His team was convinced that Zamora was absolutely telling the truth, and despite an extremely thorough investigation, the Project Blue Book team, they were unable to locate the object or its origins. So in an article for Studies in Intelligence called The Investigation of UFOs, Quintanilla says that the Zamora sighting is by far the best documented case on record of a UFO sighting. And as of today, it remains unsolved. Project Blue Book was based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is basically near Dayton, Ohio. And between 1947 and 1969, the U.S. Air Force recorded 12,618 sightings of strange phenomena, 701 of which remain unidentified. Like the Zamora case, although the CIA was not directly affiliated with the Project Blue Book, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency did play a large role in investigating UFOs in the late 1940s and early 1950s. And this led to the creation of several studies, panels, and programs. Former CIA chief historian Gerald K. Haynes wrote an in-depth article looking at the agency's role in studying the UFO phenomenon and for studies in intelligence, obviously, right? In his article, CIA's Role in the Study of UFOs, 1947 to 1990, Mr. Haynes said that while the agency's concern over UFOs was substantial until the early 1950s, the CIA has since paid only limited and peripheral attention to the phenomenon. And do you believe that, ladies and gentlemen? I don't believe that. With over 20 years of investigations from the late 40s until Project Blue Book's termination in 1969, the Central Intelligence Agency and the United States Air Force have learned a thing or two about how to investigate a UFO sighting. While most government officials and scientists now dismiss flying saucer reports as a quaint relic of the 1950s and 1960s, there's still a lot that can be learned from the history, right, and the methodology of the flying saucer intelligence. The CIA's name, Flying Saucer Intelligence. Before December 1947, there was no specific organization tasked with the responsibility for investigating and evaluating UFOs or UFO sightings. Now UAPs. There were no standards on how to evaluate reports coming in, nor were there any measurable data. There were no data points, there were no results from controlled experiments, etc. for comparison against reported sightings. Thus created was MUFON, right? The Mutual UFO Network. To end the confusion, the head of the Air Force Technical Service Command, General Nathan Twining, he established Project Sign. Well, this was initially named Project Saucer in 1948 in order to collect, collate, evaluate, and distribute within the government all information relating to such sightings. On the premise that UFOs, now UAPs, might be real, although not necessarily extraterrestrial and of national security concern, right? Project Sign eventually gave way to Project Grudge, right, which finally turned into Project Blue Book in 1952. The CIA's concern over UFOs was substantial until the early 1950s, okay, because of the potential threat to national security from these unidentified flying objects or UAPs. Most officials did not believe the sightings were actually extraterrestrial in origin. They were instead concerned that the UFOs might be from the Soviet Union, new Soviet weapons, etc. The Project Blue Book team, according to Quintanilla, the man running the program, defined 3 objectives for their investigations. 3 objectives, okay? 1, to determine if the UFO phenomena was a present threat to the security of the United States. Well, you can understand. They were concerned about us controlling our skies. To determine if the UFO phenomena exhibits any technological advances. They want the technology, right? Which could be channeled into the United States research and development, I'm sure, for weapons, and to explain or identify the stimuli which caused the observer to report a UFO. Although Project Blue Book, like previous programs and investigative bodies and projects on the subject, did not rule out the possibility of extraterrestrial phenomenon. Okay, their research and their investigations focused primarily on national security, which created what? Area 51, S4, etc., and the folks like Bob Lazar. But they were concerned also about possible Soviet technological advancements, which is understandable. Throughout the 1950s and the 1960s, various projects, panels, and other studies were led or sponsored by the United States government to research the UFO phenomenon. Okay, this includes the CIA, who sponsored the 1953 Scientific Advisory Panel on Unidentified Flying Saucers or Flying Objects, also called UAPs. This was also known as the Robertson Panel. It was named after the noted physicist H.P. Robertson from the great state of California and the California Institute of Technology, who helped put together the distinguished panel, okay, of non-military scientists to study the UFO issue. Non-military, you heard what I said. Project Blue Book also frequently consulted with outside experts, outside, persons with knowledge about this, astrophysicists, federal aviation officials, pilots, the U.S. Weather Bureau, imagine that, and local weather stations for perhaps local phenomena from the weather, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, the National Aeronautical Space Administration, NASA Kodak for photo analysis, and various laboratories, etc., for physical specimens. Even the famous astronomer Carl Sagan took part in a panel review of Project Blue Book's findings in the mid-1960s. And the report from that panel concluded that no UFO case which represented technological or scientific advances outside of a terrestrial framework had been found. So they didn't believe in ETs. But the committee did recommend that UFOs be studied intensively to settle the issue once and for all. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Zamora case in Socorro, New Mexico is still unexplained, but in my opinion, I believe that the police officer from New Mexico saw what he saw. Thanks for watching the video, ladies and gentlemen, and we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the J-Rod Files, where we're going to explore extraterrestrials, aliens, Area 51, S4, etc., etc. And we look forward to you coming along and learning new things about this phenomenon.